Well, happy Friday. The appeals court issued their stay on the district court's injunction in the gun and magazine ban challenge. We will get to that coming up, but we've got tons of other stuff to tackle as well, including the latest in the Safety Act. You've got people here in Springfield upset about the possibility that a former sheriff's deputy accused of murder in the case of Sonia Massie possibly being released pre-trial, while Cook County looking to enforce pre-trial detention for a whole host of things. So we'll look at that. We'll also look at some of the latest out of Washington, D.C. in the DOGE efforts, the Department of Government Efficiency. In particular, we'll zero in on one thing that has been focused on, and that's the Department of Energy issuing a $6.6 billion loan to Illinois-based Rivian, and that could be on the chopping block to be clawed back. Plus, we got to get to the latest in the case against Mike Madigan. That is, of course, continuing in the federal court all this week. They're not in court today. Monday's going to be a short day, but then they're back at it, and we'll get the latest from Jim Talamonte, reporter for the Center Square, in the courtroom. So stay tuned for that, all here with Illinois in Focus Daily. But up next, we got to get to the latest in the litigation against Illinois' gun and magazine ban, as the appeals court yesterday late decided to issue a stay. So stay tuned. We got the details here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Get the podcast where you get podcasts. Wake up with us each and every morning here with America's Talking Network. And don't forget to subscribe to the daily newsletter at thecentersquare.com. Illinois' gun and magazine ban that a district court said is unconstitutional remains in effect after an appeals court issued a stay on the district court's injunction. Good morning. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. We've got the latest in the litigation against the gun and magazine ban after an appeals court received the appeal with a request for a stay of the district court's injunction that the district court put a stay on for 30 days. Well, the appeals court went ahead and granted that stay to continue it yesterday. So let's jump into it. If you follow me on X, then you saw this through the Center Square. Let's get to the ruling here from the U.S. State Court of Appeals, 7th Circuit up in Chicago. The three-judge panel we now know is Frank Easterbrook, Michael Brennan, and Amy J. St. Eve. Ultimately, they say the district court issued an opinion holding that multiple state laws regarding assault weapons, large capacity magazines, and associated matters are unconstitutional. The opinion contains some language in the nature of permanent injunction, but this language does not appear in either an injunction order granting an injunction. They say that it must state the reason why it issued, state its terms specifically, and describe it to reasonable detail, and not by referring to the complaint or other document, the act or acts restrained or required. So they ultimately are questioning the final judgment there in the district court. They say defendants have appealed and they request a stay pending appeal. Plaintiffs have responded and defendants have replied. The parties also filed memoranda addressing the problems created by the district court's noncompliance with Rule 58 and 65. Appellate jurisdiction exists notwithstanding these errors because it is plain the district court is done with this case. Compliance with Rules 58 and 65 remain necessary, essentially, if any litigant anticipates enforcing the decision through the contempt power, and we trust that the district court will enter appropriate orders promptly without the need for a formal command by this court. So we have yet to see that filed. I checked this morning from the district court. Nothing else filed other than an order a couple of weeks ago denying the plaintiff's motion for their attorney's fees to be paid for by the state. But back to the appellate court here, they say defendants' request for a stay rests largely on the fact that this court already has held that the laws in question survive motions seeking preliminary injunctions. A decision at the preliminary injunction stage is not dispositive when the plaintiffs later seek permanent relief. Our opinion indicated some matters that needed further exploration, but the analysis in Beavis shows the laws have enough support to remain in place pending the final resolution of plaintiff's suit. They talk about every other court of appeals that's addressed the validity of similar legislation in the wake of the New York State Rifle Association v. Bruin case. It's come out the same way as Beavis, the appeals court argues. The laws addressed by those decisions differ in some respects from the Illinois statute, yet the absence of support in other district courts' disposition lends strength to a conclusion that the Illinois statutes should remain in force until final appellate resolution. At least two other essential identical suits are pending in other district courts within the Seventh Circuit. The three suits were addressed jointly in Beavis, and they must resolve the same way eventually. The state law cannot be valid in some parts of Illinois and invalid elsewhere. This does not necessarily imply that the three cases will again be consolidated on appeal. We are reluctant to delay disposition of this appeal indefinitely just because similar litigations pending in other districts. Still, the only way to preserve the status quo statewide is to enter a stay in the suits. The judgment of the district court accordingly is stayed. The state will remain in the stay will remain in force until this court issues its mandate. So again, the Seventh Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals issuing their stay in this case. Clearly more to come, but come December 9th, when the district court's injunction would have kicked in, after his 30-day stay, he put on the order himself, would have lifted. But the appeals court yesterday ultimately saying, we are putting another stay on this. Attorney General Kwame Raoul reacting to this, saying, I am pleased the Seventh Circuit has stayed the district court's injunction. My office will continue to prosecute the appeal. The Protect Illinois Communities Act remains law of the land as the litigations pending in the lower courts. The Protect Illinois Communities Act is an important tool to prevent weapons of war from being used in our schools and on our streets, and I'm committed to defending it constitutionally. Kwame Raoul making that statement. You've got the Illinois State Rifle Association putting out this statement saying that moments ago, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals issued an order extending the stay of Judge McGlynn's decision finding the Illinois gun ban unconstitutional. The stay remains in place until the Seventh Circuit can hear the case, which means that the unconstitutional gun ban continues to remain in effect. While we're glad the federal district court judge Stephen McGlynn's stay would have expired on Sunday, December 8th, we are disappointed but not surprised that the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals has extended that stay. Back in November, we were victorious when Judge McGlynn found the provisions of the Illinois ban on commonly owned firearms and accessories known as PICA to be unconstitutional. The state appealed immediately to the Seventh Circuit, so we also know that this battle is far from over. When this unconstitutional bill was signed by Governor Pritzker in January 2023, we promised to see the state of Illinois in court, and we've held firm on that promise and won't back down until our Second Amendment rights are restored in Illinois. So that's the statement from Illinois State Rifle Association on the appeals court's stay on the district court's injunction. Now, back to the appeals court's comments in their order there. They talked about a couple of other cases that are still pending in the Seventh Circuit dealing with gun bans. The Beavis case, where Robert Beavis has a case against the city of Naperville, that's still ongoing. Back in the district courts, looked at the docket this morning, and they say that disclosures are going to be required by December 1st. That's already come and gone. End of fact discovery order closed by April 30th of 2025. Then end of fact discovery status. They'll have a hearing on that May 7th of 2025. And this again is in the district court in the Beavis case. Then they've got more disclosures going to be filed by May 16th of 2025. Then more reports filed. Ultimately, depositions of experts going to be conducted between August 1st and the 31st of 2025. So that gives you an indication the Beavis case in district court's not going to be settled well into late next year. The Viramontes case, that's in the appeals courts. And if you recall, that's a challenge of Cook County's ban. That was heard November 12th in the Seventh Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. So we'll see what the outcome is there. Nothing was posted late last night in the Viramontes case. So we're waiting on some kind of ruling from the Seventh Circuit in that case. So those are two of the other cases that are in the Seventh Circuit's jurisdiction. One, the Beavis case, apparently stuck in district court. The Viramontes case, already heard by the appeals court. And now you've got the statewide ban that is going to be heard by the appeals court at some point, but when, we're not sure. Another case, just to keep you posted here on Illinois, and that is the case of the challenge of prohibiting individuals with concealed carry licenses from carrying their concealed firearm on mass transit. The Schoenthal case, that as well, still in the appeals court. They've got briefs that are coming up due for the appellants by the 16th of this month. And then by the 15th of January, you've got the appellee's brief due, and that's going to be coming from the Schoenthal plaintiffs. And then the appellant's reply brief will be due February 5th. So again, that's in the appeals court with those briefs and being scheduled all the way through February 5th of 2025. So that as well, still kind of matriculating through the federal courts. Separately, you've got in state court, December 19th, we're expected to hear the appeals court, the, I believe, Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals here in Springfield. They're going to be hearing the case challenging the firearm owner identification card. Again, that's a state appellate court case, but that could possibly go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court at some point. Then you get this story of what's going on with gun manufacturers and the country of Mexico, which is wild to think about. If you see this at thecentersquare.com, Cruz leads appeal to Supreme Court over Mexico's lawsuit against U.S. gun makers. Let's just read a little bit from this. From Bethany Blankley down in Texas with the Center Square. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz led a bicameral appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court requesting it to uphold American sovereignty in a $10 billion lawsuit brought by Mexico, blaming U.S. gun manufacturers for cartel violence in Mexico. The bicameral appeal was made in concert with one of a coalition of 28 attorneys general, and you've got others filing amicus briefs as well. Pretty fascinating to see that play out. So just another story to add to the ongoing conflicts here of questions of liability for gun manufacturers. We've got a similar case out of Chicago suing Glock. That's still pending in state court. But then you've got this larger question about Mexico suing gun manufacturers. All of that in the background while Illinoisans are still waiting on the outcome of gun ban lawsuits. Pretty fascinating. And this is something, I'll just touch on this briefly. We might have to do a totally different segment, but since we're talking about the courts, might as well. The Illinois Supreme Court giving different opinions over the past couple of months on the smell of cannabis and whether the smell of cannabis can be, grounds justification for a search of a vehicle. So in the case People v. Redmond, this was several months ago when it was heard by the Illinois Supreme Court, and they put out this decision. They said that since January 1st, the use of possession of cannabis is presumptively legal, subject to certain restrictions. We hold that the odor of burnt cannabis, clearly, just make sure we're clear here, burnt versus raw. So the odor of burnt cannabis alone is insufficient to provide probable cause for police officers to perform a warrantless search on a vehicle. We also hold that the totality of the facts and circumstances known to an officer did not provide probable cause to search the individual's vehicle. Therefore, the circuit court correctly granted the motion, and you can see there. So essentially, they're saying that the odor of burnt cannabis alone is insufficient to provide probable cause for police search. That was several months ago when they ruled. Yesterday, the Illinois Supreme Court, on a separate case, made a different ruling. This is the case People v. Molina. Let's pull this up. They say, in sum, we hold that the odor of raw cannabis coming from a vehicle being operated on an Illinois highway alone is sufficient to provide police officers who are trained to experience and distinguish between burnt and raw cannabis with probable cause to perform a warrantless search on a vehicle. So the difference between burnt and raw cannabis, just to kind of show you where courts come down on how important definitions are. The Illinois Supreme Court saying that the smell of raw cannabis means it could be outside of a smell-proof container, which by law, state law says if you're going to be carrying cannabis, it needs to be in a sealed, smell-proof container. So if an officer pulls over a vehicle and smells raw cannabis, they can search. Probably find some guy has some joints in a bag that's not properly, sealed up. But the smell of burnt cannabis can't be, because it might be emanating off somebody's clothes, like a passenger or something, from when they picked them up at a private location. I don't know. So regardless, interesting to see that. So we may have to talk about that in a totally separate segment with some of the arguments from the Illinois Supreme Court hearings on these. All right, so but bottom line, back to the top story here. An appeals court in Illinois, federal appeals court, issued a stay on the district court's injunction against the state's gun ban, meaning the state's gun ban remains in effect while the appeals court deals with it. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning here with America's Talking Network. Stand by as we line up a guest to join us live. Jim Talamonte will join us to talk about the latest in the case against former House Speaker Michael Madigan. So that's coming up here with Illinois in Focus Daily.
Hello.
All right.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good morning.
There's former Illinois House Speaker Michael Madigan. And Mike McLean telling reporter Jim Talamonte he's not getting paid enough to wait outside to watch both of them come in to the federal court each and every day. Jim Talamonte joins us now to give us the latest of what's happening in the federal court up in Chicago. Jim, obviously, you've just been inundated with audio and video clips that are being aired. But first, before we talk about the latest, I mean, it seems that Madigan and McLean are more and more kind of, giving you a smile, giving you a wave. What's going on there?
They've been cheery. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't. Maybe I think they were first, especially McLean. You could tell was very a little nervous approaching cameras, kind of wanted to avoid it if possible. But now he sees, especially me, every day. There are a few other photographers who are semi-regulars from some of the TV stations and at least one of the newspapers, but there are many days too when it's only me, and so McLean's gotten pretty comfortable now, and he knows I'm not gonna, he can't talk about the case, of course, but he knows I'm not gonna fire ask him about lobbyist connections in Quincy or anything like that. At least not yet. I may sneak a good question in on him here or there at some point, but yeah, he's been cheery. I think maybe everyone's a little relieved that Daniel Solis, that section of the trial took a lot less time than most people thought. And then as for Madigan, yeah, most mornings he's been relatively cheery, and whether he means it or not, I don't know, but he'll say good morning, good to see you, and so you don't get any more out of him than that, at least not so far. But
but clearly a lot's going on in the courtroom. Even though Madigan and McLean aren't expected to testify, I don't think there's been any indication of that. Their voices have been heard clearly in these undercover phone calls and videos that the jury has been shown. Obviously, the Daniel Solis testimony, pretty impactful, especially with audio and video of Solis telling Madigan, "I'm going to continue to do things for you." I'm going to, almost hinting directly at a quid pro quo, if not saying it directly, while he was on the phone with Madigan and getting chastised later in person. But Solis is done. That testimony's done. That happened earlier this week. We've got some other big things that are that have happened over the past week, including a former chief of staff, Jessica Basham, testifying as well. That was pretty compelling.
It was. There was a lot there about meetings, a lot more mention than I expected of Governor J.B. Pritzker, or at the time, Governor-elect J.B. Pritzker. A lot of talk, not so much talk, but emails and communications about setting up meetings, which would become weekly meetings between the speaker and then the governor. And who was involved in that? Well, now, Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski was part of that transition team. She was a special assistant to Governor-elect Pritzker. And so some of these communications involved her. And thus, that leads us to Monday, when after Nancy Kimmy is done, the consultant, a lobbyist who testified yesterday, Thursday, which we expect her to finish fairly quickly, Nikki Budzinski is set to take the stand Monday morning for what we expect to be a brief day. But yeah, with Jessica Basham, lots of communications involving meetings and those kinds of things. She wasn't Madigan's chief of staff for that long. It was 2 or 3 years, if that.
Yeah,
but,
she became chief of staff for Madigan after Tim Mapes was let go when Tim Mapes had harassment allegations thrown his way. Tim Mapes was Madigan's longtime chief of staff, but he had a dual role, as Madigan had a dual role, working for the Democratic Party of Illinois. So clearly that after Mapes left, that kind of took a certain tentacle of sorts of Madigan off the playing field, and you had Jessica Basham come in as a chief of staff. She obviously there, I'm guessing, being subpoenaed by the prosecution to testify, but she did say during cross-examination she still considers Mike Madigan a friend.
Yes, very much so, and you could see there wasn't any apparent. Madigan has given the glare to some people who come in, but not to Jessica Basham that I saw. Yeah, it seemed to be very amicable. Even Nancy Kimmy seemed to be very amicable toward McLean, even though Nancy Kimmy was a Republican. She was chief of staff for Judy Barr Topinka, both when Judy was treasurer and comptroller, and was part of Governor Rauner's transition team, and at times part of his administration. So, there are, it's not, you have these men accused of all these things, but they had a lot of friendships in addition to, as you said, tentacles everywhere politically. There were a lot of friendships formed over the course of these decades that they were involved in all of these different things. And so yes, with Jessica Basham, it was friendly, and she wasn't the political operative that Mapes was. She went out of her way to say, I didn't do any direct work for the Democratic Party of Illinois. I was, I didn't, that wasn't my role. And but she seemed very friendly toward the speaker, though she was called by the government, but in large part to testify and verify these communications. Right. The government just introduced a ton of material. Oh. And so all these emails, schedules.
The handwritten notes showing, the top priorities that Madigan was going to talk with Pritzker about, progressive income tax, sports betting, gun safety, a variety of other things that they laid out in their agenda, so to speak. But also, I mean, this whole thing is kind of lifting the veil of what it's like going from, a Democrat speaker who had years, 4 years with a Republican governor. And we're seeing the curtain lifted on what it was like in a transition from a Republican governor to a Democrat governor with a very powerful House Speaker there at the helm. Finally here, Jim, when we talk about these cases and when you're in the courtroom and you're reporting on these cases, a lot of names, a lot of instances, a lot of locations. If you could remove all of that and just distill down so far what you've heard federal prosecutors' case is against Madigan here.
Well, I think actually, even though Solis was that was the juicy stuff, right? We've heard a lot, even yesterday on these recordings with Nancy Kimmy, the Chinatown parcel. But to me, the ComEd stuff to me is still the most impactful here, and still the most. If you had to, I'm not on the jury, but if I had to say right now, where could Madigan and McLean be in the most trouble? I think it's the ComEd stuff. 23 counts. Will the government be able to nail them on all of them? A lot of doubt. I think still, even though we're nearing the end of the government's presentation. I don't know what that Solis, that Chinatown deal. I pass it nearly every day. That parking lot, it's still a parking lot. That never happened, right?
Well, and even testimony showing Teresa Ma kind of sniffing it out, right? Saying, "Now this was completely contrived by Solis, and I don't like this idea. We need more parking in Chinatown."
Right, and I think that Solis. His behavior comes off as extremely unlikable, right? But I don't know how that's going to be a big part of this. I think it's how they perceived him, and it's hard to know. How do you get inside 12 people's heads? And with the La Schiazza AT&T case, all it takes is one juror to not go along, and you could have that mistrial. So it's still, as Patrick Collins told me a few weeks ago, former prosecutor of the George Ryan corruption case. There's this mountain of evidence, but it's circumstantial. So is it enough? We heard more than 20 recordings yesterday from prosecutor Julia Schwartz. There's one after another after another. Some of them were somewhat impactful and relevant. Some of them were just setting up the next one, and so it's a lot. But it's will it be enough to remove that, to overcome that burden of proof prosecutors have and remove that any reasonable doubt?
I guess we will see. Obviously, with Jim Talamonte off today from federal court, but they're going to be back just briefly on Monday, but then full force on Tuesday.
Yes, next week will be a different schedule. The judge had planned for an early exit Monday. It's going to be especially early. He's hoping to attend a funeral from a fellow judge. And so the goal is to get Nancy Kimmy finished, which should happen very quickly. And then Nikki Budzinski, they arranged things so she could come in Monday, fly in or be there Monday and then get back to Washington so she doesn't miss any votes, apparently. That was the talk among the attorneys. So they're expecting really to be done by 10th. It's going to be like 9 a.m. to 10:30 is the plan. Now the judge said, if I have to miss this, I will. We can go longer. It's I have to do my job.
Yeah.
But they they're I think promising Budzinski she won't have to be there too long. And I think this is going to be more to set up again those meetings, that transition stuff between Pritzker and Madigan.
Yeah, pretty fascinating.
Forward. And then short day, and then no court next Thursday or Friday. So a different week, full days Tuesday, Wednesday.
Jim Talamonte, greatly appreciate your reporting. People need to head over to thecentersquare.com, find Illinois, and read the latest there. Greatly appreciate your time. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Greg.
It is Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Stay up to date with us each and every weekday morning here with Illinois in Focus Daily. Electric car maker Rivian set to get a $6.6 billion loan from the Biden Department of Energy, but could that possibly be on the chopping block? Welcome back. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning as we give you a heads up of what you need to know to start your day. And on this Friday, yesterday was a busy day in Washington, D.C., the Department of Government Efficiency visiting Capitol Hill. And you can read this from our reporter, Brett Rowland. Of course, the world's richest man visiting with members of Congress. They talked about a variety of things. Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, and also Vivek Ramaswamy, another business leader, both visiting members of Congress, talking about a variety of things. But obviously, when it comes to spending in Congress, how do you attack the largest issues, right? What are those? We're talking $2 trillion that Musk and Ramaswamy are looking to try to cut. But what about some of these programs, like a federal loan to give to struggling EV auto manufacturers? This is another story from the Center Square's Elise Appel. All-electric automaker Rivian, right here in Illinois, received a conditional commitment for $6.6 billion loan from the U.S. Department of Energy. It finalized the loan. It would be used to aid in construction of $5 billion for a plant not in Illinois, but in Atlanta. Politicians from both sides of the aisle were quick to react to the announcements, adding that funding going to what they labeled a failing company. Biden's forking over $6.6 billion to automaker Rivian to build a Georgia plant they've already halted, Ramaswamy said. One justification is the 7,500 jobs it creates, but that implies a cost of $880,000 per job, which is insane. This smells more like a political shot across the bow at Elon Musk and Tesla. So Ramaswamy had that to say. U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, Illinois U.S. Senator, he fired back and tried to say that Elon Musk has benefited from these type of loans. Here's Durbin's statement. He says that isn't it rich? In 2009, when his Tesla operation was hanging by a thread, Elon Musk borrowed nearly $500 million from the Department of Energy, saving the company so that they could put a new model of cars on the showroom floors. Now his Doge partner, Vivek Ramaswamy, is questioning a similar loan to Rivian. Is it really a similar loan? We're talking about, $6.6 billion versus, in 2024 dollars, mind you, versus $500 million of a loan in 2009 for Tesla. Regardless, back to Durbin's comments here. Bottom line is Elon Musk, his record is clear. His vast business empire has benefited from government assistance in the past. He is in a delicate position with many potential conflicts of interest. I hope there will be some sound thought to his ideas and the ideas of his Doge partner. So what kinds of things are they going to be able to cut? What are they going to be able to go after? Is Doge going to really bring about $2 trillion in cuts to the federal budget? A big dollar amount, right? I mean, the budget's $6-7 trillion, but we've got substantial amounts of debt. $30 trillion in debt or something? Here's U.S. House Speaker Johnson talking about, the efforts underway. He was talking ahead of Musk and Ramaswamy addressing members of Congress, and Speaker Johnson being asked, are they really going to be able to find $2 trillion in savings from the federal budget? Here's his response to that particular question yesterday.
And second question, do you support clawing back federal funds that the Biden administration is pushing out in these final days, including to companies like Rivian, a competitor of Tesla?
Let me answer these questions in reverse order. We're very frustrated by what the Biden administration appears to be doing right now, and that is, as you said, shoveling money. As someone said on a hidden camera on a clip that I saw, someone in the administration who's charged with distributing the funds said it's like we're dumping gold bars off the Titanic here at the end. We take over in January, and until then, the big government Democrats are still in charge, and they're spending money, in our view, recklessly. And so, yes, we've had a lot of discussions over the last couple of days about what our authority would be to claw some of that back and to stop it. It's a serious challenge, and we need to stop it and expose what's happening. That's what this effort will be about going forward. There is an enormous amount of waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, and I think everyone knows that intuitively. And so the efforts here, both with our subcommittees that are being created here and with the DOJ effort itself, will be to explore that, to investigate it, and lay it bare for the American people to see. I think that's how we'll begin to bring about the change that we all need. So this is an ongoing effort.
So Johnson clearly, siding with the idea of more government efficiency, and recent polling suggests that the American people also support increased government efficiency. The Center Square's Casey Harper with this story talking about the majority of Americans generally support the idea of cutting back on federal government. Pew Research from the summer found 56% of Americans say the government is almost always wasteful and inefficient. Gallup's recent polling data shows 55% of Americans say the government is doing too much, while only 41% say it should do more. Americans are more evenly split how big government should be, but increasing government efficiency has more broad support. So what does that increased government efficiency look like? A lot of conversation about government employees working from home. You've got a lot of questions about different types of programs to do research on, a whole host of weird issues. But that's small numbers, right? How are you going to get to $2 trillion? A lot of people worried that there's going to be something like means testing for benefits that are funded by taxpayers, like, what's your disability level? How many hours a week are you working? Those types of things. What kind of disability do you have? But there's also the growing cost of non-citizen migrants. They're going to be able to cut that out entirely, including in Illinois, where we get some federal dollars to help pay for non-citizen health care. So are those dollars going to be stopped? But then, after dealing with, various issues around benefits that are taxpayer funded, and subsidies that are taxpayer funded, well, then the next step is look at the Pentagon and how much money is being spent there. But obviously, all of this will be continuing to watch to see how it plays out, as government efficiency is popular with voters. But are we actually going to be able to get to an efficient government, especially with the goal that DOJ has to close up shop before the country's 250th birthday in 2026? We shall see. Keep it here. And get the headlines at thecentersquare.com. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning with America's Talking Network. And get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus Daily. All right, one more segment for you guys on this Friday. Stay tuned. In 5, 4, 3, 2.
I think this is a bastardization of the Safety Act. I think the Safety Act was enacted to keep low-level criminals who could not afford a bond that was set to allow them to get out on bond. That wasn't for this guy has been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 2 more felonies. This is a complete bastardization of it.
It's James Wilburn, the father of Sonia Massie, who was shot and killed in her home July 6th. A former Sangamon County Sheriff's Deputy, Sean Grayson, is charged with 3 counts of murder, official misconduct, and battery with a firearm. He is being held pending trial. The trial has been postponed multiple times with a possible start date sometime in January. But whether or not he is to be held in jail pending trial, an appeals court has said that the district court needs to go back and do a pretrial release hearing, saying that they didn't make the case that Grayson was a threat to the community. Massie's family obviously pretty upset, but the appeals court saying it's the Safety Act, the Pretrial Fairness Act, the no cash bail law in Illinois. Welcome in. It's Illinois in Focus Daily on this Friday. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us for Illinois in Focus Daily each and every weekday morning. So let's get to this. As yesterday, you had the supporters and family of Sonia Massie go to the Illinois State Capitol to address their concerns, and this all follows, again, July 6th, Massie's shot and killed. Body camera footage showing former Deputy Sean Grayson in his official capacity as a deputy. Massie called about a prowler. You've seen the video. We've talked about it before. I'm not going to re-air that video. It's pretty gut-wrenching. But in the video from body camera of a second deputy, you see Grayson open fire and shoot and kill Sonia Massie. So he was charged. He was let go of the sheriff's department. He was charged with 3 counts of murder, official misconduct, and also battery with a firearm. Held pending trial. The district court found that the prosecutors in Sangamon County made their case to hold Grayson in custody pending trial. As part of the Safety Act, right? The Pretrial Fairness Act ended cash bail statewide. And there was a lot of debate about, will this law mean that, individuals accused of murder will be able to take to the streets? Well, the appeals court looked at the district courts and said they did not make their case. So somebody who's charged with first-degree murder, 3 counts of first-degree murder, could possibly be let out here. But the family is waiting for possible intervention by the Illinois Supreme Court, so we'll be watching that. But here's Teresa Haley, a community activist, talking about this case, how gut-wrenching it is, and where we're at in this.
So many black and brown people are in jail. They lose their families, they lose their homes, they lose their jobs, just because they can't afford bail. So that was our main push in the black and brown community in supporting the Safety Act. But it's been taken totally out of content. I'm asking the legislators to go back and to visit the act and see what we can do to tweak it, because it definitely needs tweaking. If a person is charged with murder, not even convicted yet, they are a risk to society. If not themselves, they are a risk to the rest of us. If Sean Grayson was to get out today, he can change his hair color, his eye color. We wouldn't even know him. He would blend in with the community. I wouldn't feel safe, and I hope that you wouldn't feel safe. So we're asking our legislators to revisit it, to say if someone is charged with murder, double murder, to keep them in jail.
That was a big concern for those who were not supporting the Safety Act when it was debated and for the months afterwards, because if you recall, the Safety Act with the Pretrial Fairness Act passed during lame duck session in January 2021. And then the pretrial fairness portion was litigated in courts. It was held from being put into effect until last year when the Illinois Supreme Court sided with the state, saying that the no cash bail statewide can go into effect. And then we get a case like this. Calvin Christian, another local member of the community in Springfield, he's also on the Massie Commission. He said that the Fourth Circuit State Appeals Court, their ruling makes no sense.
Even for the appellate court to rule the day before Thanksgiving, and we have the family that is living without Sonia Massie. I mean, come on now. How can the appellate court do that? But right now, the appellate court has ruled that Sean Grayson, he won't have pretrial determinations until January 2nd. But right now, they are leaving it up to the Supreme Court to rule whether he can remain in custody based off the Safety Act. So right now, I think everybody needs to lean on the Supreme Court and say, hey, you guys need to step in within these next 35 days. That's what this is about. The Illinois Supreme Court, step in now. Don't let it wait. Step in now.
So what's going to happen? Is the Illinois Supreme Court going to step in and say that Sean Grayson should remain behind bars pending trial? Not sure. The father, James Wilburn, addressing this issue of the appeals court and also the Safety Act, as you heard earlier, saying that the appeals court is doing a bastardization of the Safety Act. Here's more from Mr. Wilburn about the loss of his daughter.
My message to those 3 judges who ruled unanimously that Sean Grayson is not a danger to the people of Springfield. If you got room in your house, give him a bedroom to live in your house. If there's a house for sale on your block, let him move on the block where you live. And we'll see how quickly that NIMBY attitude comes out in you. Not on my block. But you say he's no longer a threat to civilized people here in Springfield. And I want to tell you all that until a undertaker put some embalming fluid in this body, I'm going to fight to keep my daughter's killer in a jail cell. I don't ever want to see him walk free amongst any of us.
Pretty heart-wrenching family struck by tragedy, and not much indication of relief on their part, but we'll see what the Illinois Supreme Court does. So that's what's happening in Sangamon County, right? And the Sangamon County prosecutors are fighting to keep Grayson behind bars. And people have brought up, it's not just people worried about Grayson getting out and being harmed. It's also, you got to consider if Grayson gets out, could there be harm done to him? And some of that was kind of hinted at during yesterday's news conference. But up in Cook County, they've got a new state's attorney that is promising to take a different track with the Safety Act and pretrial fairness. Let's take a look at Cook County State's Attorney Eileen O'Neill Burke with a news release announcing new detention policies to increase public safety and protect victims. Let's read through this. Prosecutors will seek pretrial detention for the highest classes of violent offenses, all violent offenses that occur on public transit, any offense that involves the possession and use of an assault weapon, as well as numerous domestic violence, sex offenses, and crimes against children. Upon taking the office of Cook County State's Attorney, Eileen O'Neill Burke announced policy changes aimed at reducing violence and protecting victims by empowering prosecutors to seek detention as provided under the law. Under the Safety Act, the state must file a petition to detain an offender before the court can consider it. A judge can no longer hold someone pretrial absent a prosecutor requesting it. Effective immediately, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office will be seeking detention for every detainable felony offense where an offender used and possessed a firearm equipped with an extended magazine, drum magazine, automatic switch, or used a ghost gun or defaced firearm. Any domestic violence related to stalking or sex offense where the offender used or possessed a weapon. Any detainable felony offense that is committed on public transportation. All murder or Class X felony offenses, first-degree murder, aggravated arson, aggravated battery of a child, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated vehicle hijacking, armed robbery, home invasion, solicitation of murder. All sex offenses where the victim was under the age of 13 and the offender was an adult through the duration of the offense, or when the offense was committed during the commission of another felony. And all cases involving the manufacture, dissemination, or possession of child pornography. So she says, together we're going to build a safer, stronger Cook County, and that starts on day one. The police superintendent for Chicago siding with this. You had Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson asked about this very news release yesterday at an unrelated event. Here's the mayor.
With the changeover in the state's attorney's office and new rules being applied to things like retail theft, do you have any concern that we'll see more people incarcerated as a result and create a greater need for returning programs like this one under the new state's attorney?
Well, look, here's what's necessary in this moment. All of us have to work together to address not just disinvestment, but to address how we respond to returning residents. I can say this. There have been policies in the past that have demonstrated that they are not effective. And this is why this office is so important, because this office gets to weigh in on these dynamics.
And he's talking about the event he was doing was the Office of Reentry. He announced a new director. It's for an office to help individuals who live in Chicago coming out of prison to get back into society. But he never really answered the question addressing Eileen O'Neill Burke's move to, hold people pre-trial for certain offenses. There's also been discussion about more, focus on retail theft and that type of thing. But Johnson never really addressed the issue, only to say that there were policies in the past he believes were detrimental to people. So we'll obviously be watching what happens in Chicago. Got to get out of here. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning here with America's Talking Network. Holy moly, I didn't think this week would be as jam-packed as it was, but, I mean, just considering how much we've gone through today on a Friday, heading into the holidays, a lot going on. If you missed any of the segments, of course, you can replay it here with the live stream, or we get you the segments at America's Talking Network, where you can also watch news clips of some of the things popping off here in Illinois and across the country. So be sure to subscribe, America's Talking Network, and get the newsletters anywhere you live. If it's in Illinois or elsewhere, get the newsletter at thecentersquare.com, free to you, and also get the podcast where you get podcasts with Illinois in Focus Daily. I got to get out of here. It's Friday, and we've already been doing this for 50 minutes now. So have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday.